Why do folks decide to become doctors? Adam Kay, the bloke who penned this book, used to be a doctor. But in 2015, he hung up his stethoscope and swapped it for a pen. Why? Well, he'd taken a 5-year break from the medical world and decided it was time to spill the beans on what it's really like to be a doctor. So, why do people decide to study medicine in the first place? Kay reckons there are 3 main reasons. First off, some folks are inspired by their parents. Just like Kay, who was nudged towards medicine by his dad. Then there's the influence of TV and movies. Shows like House and Grey's Anatomy make being a doctor look pretty cool, don't they? They're always saving lives and solving medical mysteries. It's no wonder some people get drawn in by the glamour of it all. And lastly, there are those who are driven by a desire to find cures for deadly diseases. They want to make a difference, to save lives, and to contribute to society in a big way. But here's the kicker, being a doctor isn't all it's cracked up to be. After 6 years of hitting the books, Kay found that the reality of being a doctor was a far cry from what he'd imagined. The long hours, the stress, the responsibility, it was a lot to handle. But don't get him wrong, those 6 years in the hospital weren't a waste. They shaped him, taught him valuable lessons, and gave him a unique perspective on the medical profession. And now, he's sharing those experiences with us. So, to sum it up, people choose to study medicine for all sorts of reasons, from following in their parents' footsteps, to being influenced by TV shows, to wanting to cure deadly diseases. But the reality of the job can be tough, and it's not always as glamorous as it seems. Despite this, the lessons learned along the way can be priceless, as Kay's journey shows us. Point 2. What's at the heart of being a doctor? Being a junior doctor, as Adam Kay paints it, is like being a sponge in a sea of knowledge. You're always soaking up new information, watching the pros do their thing, and trying to mimic their moves. It's like being an apprentice to a master craftsman, except the stakes are much higher. You're not just making a chair, you're trying to save lives. And let's not forget the night shifts. They're like a marathon you didn't train for, pushing you to your limits. It's like being a soldier thrown into battle, using everything you've learned to survive and help others do the same. But it's not all doom and gloom. There's a fair bit of laughter too. Like when Adam got his new email address, adam.k@nhs.net. He joked that if anything went wrong, he could blame it on a guy named Adam. It's a classic case of using humor to lighten the load in a high-stress job. And then there are the patients. They're a mixed bag of personalities, each one unique and unpredictable. Like the guy who wore his shirt as a coat and decided to join the doctors on their morning rounds. He even tried to join in on their medical discussions. It's a reminder that every day in a hospital is different, and you never know what's going to happen next. But there's a darker side to the job too. Adam's first encounter with death was a patient with esophageal vein dilatation. Despite his and his colleague Hugo's best efforts, they couldn't save him. It hit Adam hard, so hard that he started smoking. It's a stark reminder of the emotional toll the job can take. Dealing with death and suffering is part of the job, and it's not something you can easily shake off. Do doctors ever get used to death? Do they ever stop blaming themselves when they can't save a patient? It's a tough question, and there's no easy answer. But one thing's for sure, it takes a toll. And taking time off to recover, only to come back and face the same challenges, is no walk in the park. So, being a doctor, as Adam Kay shows us, is a juggling act. You're constantly learning, cracking jokes, dealing with a wide range of patients, and grappling with the harsh realities of life and death. It's a job that requires skill, resilience, and a whole lot of emotional strength. Point 3. Why pick a medical specialty? Adam Kay, a young doctor, found himself at a career crossroads after a year of being a jack-of-all-trades at the hospital. He had to pick a specialty, a decision that would shape his entire career. After much thought, he chose obstetrics and gynecology, the branch of medicine that deals with women's health and pregnancy. He joked about how his chosen field was a stark contrast to geriatrics, which focuses on the health of the elderly. While geriatricians deal with the ailments of old age, obstetricians and gynecologists, like Kay, help bring new life into the world. During his training, Kay got to witness and take part in many cesarean sections, which are operations to deliver babies. He was even given the chance to perform these surgeries himself, but only agreed when he was sure he had the skills and knowledge to do so. Despite the intense concentration these procedures required, Kay found the most rewarding part was knowing he was directly involved in the birth of a new life. Kay also worked with neonatologists, who are doctors that specialize in taking care of newborn babies. He was amazed by their careful attention to the early stages of a baby's life, which has helped to greatly reduce the death rate of premature babies in the last 50 years. One of the most unforgettable moments during Kay's training was when he managed to save a life outside the hospital. One night, he saw a worrying post from a friend on Facebook that hinted at suicidal thoughts. Kay immediately reached out and spent 2 hours talking to his friend, convincing him to get help at the hospital. This incident showed the importance of always being alert and ready to respond, even when off duty. Kay's experiences during his training show how important it is to choose a specialty that matches your interests and abilities. They also highlight the huge responsibility and reward that comes with being a doctor, no matter what your specialty is. Whether it's delivering a baby or saving a life with a late-night chat, every action can make a big difference. Point 4. How do tough times shape a doctor's values? Adam Kay, a fresh-faced doc in the UK's NHS, had a baptism of fire when he decided to switch hospitals after his first year as a senior house officer. The new place was a world away from his old stomping ground, fewer resources, outdated tech, and a workload that would make a workhorse wince. But Adam, ever the trooper, didn't let it faze him. He was all about the ladies, well, their reproductive health to be precise. Obstetrics and gynecology were his jam, and no amount of hardship was going to change that. Year 2 saw Adam hitting the books, aiming to bag a membership to the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. He had 2 textbooks to guide him, but they were about as useful as a chocolate teapot. One was chock full of jargon that he and his mates had never heard of, let alone used. The other, in a fit of optimism, suggested that a few hours of study a day for 6 months would do the trick. Adam had 4 months and a schedule that left no room for extra study hours. But every cloud has a silver lining, and for Adam, it was his partner. H was his rock, putting up with his crazy hours, his forgetfulness when it came to picking up birthday gifts, and his yearly requests to up sticks because of work. H was the embodiment of patience, understanding, and love, the kind that doesn't come with conditions. Then there was the octogenarian Polish lady who Adam met during his practice. She spotted his Polish roots without him saying a word, and her sunny disposition was a breath of fresh air. She'd introduce him to her family, regale him with tales from her life, and her never-say-die attitude was a lesson in perseverance and positivity. So, despite the trials and tribulations, Adam's early years as a doc were a crash course in sticking to his guns. His dedication to his patients, his love for his profession, the unwavering support from H, and the life lessons from his patients, all these helped him stay true to his values. Point 5. When do doctors get to relax? In his 3rd year of playing doctor, Adam Kay had a couple of lightbulb moments. The first was realizing that he was all in, despite the fact that his paycheck was laughably small. He was earning less than the guy flipping burgers at the local fast food joint, but it didn't faze him. He found a sense of purpose in his work, seeing the worth of his role as a doctor. It wasn't just about feeling good about himself, but understanding the bigger picture of what he was doing. He started paying attention to how doctors talked to each other and how much they valued each other's work. Being a doctor is a tough gig. They're often working for months on end without a day off, pulling extra shifts, and getting slapped on the wrist for the smallest mistakes. That was the drill at the hospital where Adam was working. But he noticed that there wasn't a lot of back-patting going on. He wondered if the mood among the junior doctors would lift if they were a bit more supportive of each other. The only way to find out was to start cheering on his colleagues. Adam's second lightbulb moment was more personal. He was itching to find a place to call home with his other half. H, looking for an apartment was a bit of a roller coaster ride, but he enjoyed talking about the prospect of getting a mortgage with a financial advisor. The advisor was surprised by how little Adam was spending. Despite the fact that his job left him with barely any time to splash the cash, Adam had never been more grateful for his career. When Adam became a registrar, things started to change. He was now in charge of running the department, teaching students, and only got his hands dirty with the tricky surgeries. He was often late for work, but there were some perks. He had a bit of clout, more time to spend with H, and a place to call his own. Life wasn't as much of a grind as it used to be. But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. One day, Adam decided to work on his day off. It was a bit like Stockholm Syndrome, where you start to like the very thing that's keeping you captive. In reality, Adam was worried about a patient who'd had a tricky operation and wanted to make sure they were okay. In a nutshell, a time when doctors can finally breathe easy is when a doctor gets to a point in their career where they've got a bit of stability and satisfaction, both at work and at home. For Adam Kay, this happened when he became a registrar, found a balance between work and play, and got his own place. Despite the long hours and high demands of being a doctor, he found a sense of fulfillment and purpose in his work. Point 6. Do doctors believe in superstitions? Adam Kay, a young doctor, spills the beans on some of the most peculiar beliefs that doctors hold. You'd think that in a profession rooted in science and evidence, there'd be no room for superstitions. But, as Kay shows us, even doctors can't escape the clutches of old wives' tales and traditions. Take, for instance, the odd belief about surgical staples. Kay was taught by his professors that using an even number of staples when stitching up a patient was a recipe for bad luck. It might sound bonkers, but he didn't see any harm in following it. So, he'd tell his students to always use an odd number of staples. It's a classic example of how these superstitions can keep going, even when there's no scientific reason behind them. Then there's the taboo of wishing someone good luck before a night shift. In Kay's hospital, those words were seen as a sign of impending doom. The belief was that saying good luck would lead to a night filled with complicated cases and emergencies. This superstition was so deeply rooted that Kay and his colleagues would swear if anyone dared to wish them good luck. Kay also had a personal superstition about not operating if songs by the rock band Kiss were playing on the radio. He thought their songs, often about death and hell, were bad omens. It might seem like a weird personal quirk, but it's another example of how superstitions can affect a doctor's actions. On a lighter note, Kay and his colleagues had a tradition of keeping a list of the most unusual names they came across among newborns. This was their way of having a bit of fun in the hospital. The list included names like Satan, which sounds like Satan, Lasagna, and Princess Michael. Despite these quirks and traditions, Kay also learned a lot from his work. He spent some time in a private clinic, but he found the red tape and the focus on insurance and expenses to be a turn-off. He preferred the camaraderie and shared experiences of the hospital, even with its oddities. In one unforgettable incident, a patient sued Kay, accusing him of unprofessionalism. This was a stressful experience for Kay, and he even thought about countersuing because the lawsuit was taking him away from his medical duties. This incident highlights the pressures and challenges that doctors face, on top of the superstitions and traditions they have to navigate. Point 7. Is becoming a doctor the end or just the beginning? Adam Kay's journey from a greenhorn doctor to a senior registrar is a classic case of the greatest achievement can be the beginning of the end. It's a bit like climbing to the top of a mountain, only to realize you're afraid of heights. Adam's promotion to senior registrar was a big deal. It was like being handed the keys to the kingdom, but the kingdom was a complex maze of infertility cases. Despite the workload, Adam was always there for his mates, even when they did daft things. Take the time a student came to him after a lecture, having injured himself in a rather peculiar way. The lad had tried to stop a fan with his manhood. Adam, though shocked, kept his cool and sorted him out. But being a doctor isn't just about patching up silly injuries. It's about life and death, and that can weigh heavy on your soul. Adam found this out the hard way when he had to deal with a tragic delivery. The baby didn't make it, and the mother lost a lot of blood. Despite his best efforts, he couldn't save the baby, and that hit him hard. That was the straw that broke the camel's back for Adam. The emotional toll was too much, and he decided to hang up his stethoscope. His crowning achievement, becoming a senior registrar, had ironically marked the end of his career. So, when we say, the greatest achievement can be the beginning of the end, we're talking about the irony of success. It's about how reaching a big goal can sometimes lead to unexpected and not so great outcomes. In Adam's case, his promotion, while a big win, eventually led to him leaving the profession he'd worked so hard to succeed in. Point 8. Conclusion. The journey of a medical professional is not for the faint-hearted. It is a path filled with long hours, sleepless nights, and a constant battle between life and death. The medical field is a world of its own, filled with unique experiences that can be both rewarding and heartbreaking. The reality of being a doctor is far from the glamorous portrayal seen on television. It involves making tough decisions, often under immense pressure, and dealing with the consequences of those decisions. It's about learning to cope with the emotional toll of losing patients and the joy of saving lives. Despite the challenges, there is a sense of fulfillment that comes from helping others. The medical profession is not just about treating diseases, it's about understanding people, their fears, and their hopes. It's about providing comfort and reassurance in their most vulnerable moments. The journey may be tough, but the rewards are immeasurable. It's about making a difference, one patient at a time. It's about the privilege of being trusted with people's lives and the responsibility that comes with it. In the end, the pain, the exhaustion, and the emotional roller coaster are all worth it. Because at the heart of it all, being a doctor is about the profound human connection that heals not just the body, but also the soul.